Welcome back to the WRHS Podcast. Our guest today is Johnny Thau. Let's start the questions now. Where did you go to school to?
Well, hold on a moment. Let me just thank you, Caleb and Alex and Logan, for inviting me to this podcast. And yes, I can start out with where I went to college. And I went to Washington University in St. Louis, graduated as a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering and Electrical Engineering. And a few years later, I got a master's degree at Chapman University and University of Southern California in System Engineering and Business Administration. And all that came together for a good future career with the Air Force and for aerospace after that. When I basically retired from the Air Force, I went into aerospace.
Okay.
Who did you build spacesuits for?
Oh, in the process, when I went to White Sands Missile Range, I got involved with hypervelocity impacts, which are akin to the micrometeorite impacts that are on the lunar surface. And in that process, we got the particulate definition and the gravity ratios such that we could determine the amount of dust that might be kicked up by walking on the moon that would adhere to the spacesuit through static electricity, and thus changing the ability to keep the spacesuit or the astronaut cool or warm, depending on the situation. Obviously, when he's in the shade, he doesn't have the sunlight, so he's going to be pretty cold. And when he's in the sunlight, he's going to be pretty hot. So you have to be able to have the spacesuit adapt to that. And the first order is to work the skin of the spacesuit.
So, you want to tell us about your time working with NASA?
Well, at the time, Sam Phillips, is a lieutenant general, I believe, was put in charge of helping NASA get into the space business, because prior to that, the Air Force had a program called Manned Orbital Laboratory. So General Phillips went with NASA, and that's how we came on board in giving assistance to NASA. And it was pretty much everything from qualifying astronauts to all of the safety type of activities that are required to launch somebody into space. And we also had the launch facilities out of Cape Canaveral that were being turned over with NASA as well. And Cape Canaveral's Patrick Air Force Base, that whole complex along the east coast of Florida.
Have you ever worked for Elon Musk?
Elon Musk, I wish I had worked for him. He's one of these people that likes dedicated workers and has some visions, and especially I would love to get involved with the Mars team, but basically all I do is chat with him on Instagram and some other social media. But I think he's got some really great ideas, and he applies some really neat technology, and that's demonstrated with his Tesla vehicles and some of his other tunnel works and so forth that he's performed in the past.
What do you do to get your work done? Like, what did you go to school for?
I went to school primarily to go into the space business, and I was going to be an astronaut, but I joined the Air Force ROTC and tested to become a pilot, and I failed that with the they call it red dot test. It's equivalent to watching or seeing a aircraft carrier light at night, and it was so far off in the distance that I just didn't recognize it. So I didn't pass the eye test, so to speak, and got involved in going to the Air Force and fell into the NASA interface or interaction, primarily just from the technology I was working on.
What's your opinion on electric cars?
Well, nice that you mentioned that. My partner just got a hybrid electric vehicle. It's a Toyota product, and it's called a RAV4. And it's one of these machines that they had a pre-runner called a Prius. And it runs on gasoline, and it also runs on electrically. And I guess you have to always keep the battery charged up, and that happens, I guess, a couple different ways. One is that braking energy is applied to charging the batteries and also anything kinetic going downhill with braking, and also just running off the engine tends to charge the battery as well. And you get really great gas mileage, and you have to be a little bit careful about the gasoline consumption. But all in all, it seems like it's a really good transition to electric vehicles. This is a good, people pro and con hybrids, but I think it's a better deal than an all-electric vehicle at this time. There doesn't seem to be enough infrastructure for total usage of electric vehicles. I know back when I was in school, we talked about electric vehicles in the future, and most of the technology was based on batteries, but also having a power strip where you'd have a contactor off of your vehicle that would keep the battery available, so when you went off the highway where there wasn't any charging strip, then you had the battery to run around off the grid, so to speak. This is a wave of the future, but I think there'll be a lot of complementary fossil fuel type of vehicles. Now, I say that probably in the wrong term, because I think you're going to see more hydrogen-based vehicles, such as fuel cells, for instance, and also the use of ammonia and hydrogen for giving you the propulsion. So it's not necessarily going to be all electric, but it's probably going to be non-polluting. People talk about electric vehicles being non-polluting, and one of the problems with electrical vehicles, be motors or engines, is that they give off ozone. So rather than having a CO2 byproduct, you might have an ozone byproduct. So,
funny question. Do you think there will ever be flying cars?
I guess you need to see Popular Mechanics or some magazine like that, because I think they already exist.
Yeah.
I think more along the lines of these hovercraft are more oriented toward the flying car thing. You don't want to have people leaving the highway too far because of we'll call it air traffic. And I think you need to maintain a contact with the surface so that you can avoid obstacles. And even though you have terrain avoidance type systems and so forth to avoid the obstacles, there's still, I think, a need for maintaining a pathway that's human friendly, as well as robotically friendly or autonomously friendly. Okay, I mean, we drive cars autonomously now. We have robots that drive cars. I mean, that's one of Elon Musk's technical thrust, was having basically driverless cars, so they could let the robot take you from point A to point B without having to basically steer the vehicle and do all the operational work, braking, turning, and all that. But let the robot do that.
Have you ever flown an airplane?
Have I ever flown an airplane? Let's see, I've flown a model airplane. I've flown a little drone, helicopter type thing, and then a real passenger airplane. I got to fly one up to, from White Sands to Moab, Utah one time, and it's probably against the rules, but I got to fly for a half hour or so. And they're just like the simulator to a large extent, except the sounds of the engine and so forth are a little bit, in this particular case, it was a two-engine, I think it's called a Sky King. Yeah, it was a dual engine aircraft, and it was fun, but it can get boring too. I can see that people getting bored flying it, but if you're on the ball and using the radio and everything, it can keep you busy also.
You said you were in the Air Force, so did you ever get deployed anywhere?
My deployments were pretty much stateside. I started out in Holland Air Force Base, went to White Sands Missile Range, went to Los Angeles Air Force Station, went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Station, went to Andrews Air Force Base, Patrick Air Force Base, back to Norton Air Force Base in San Bernardino, California, up to Vandenberg Air Force Base for launches. Almost all the West Coast launches are out of Vandenberg, and for polar orbits for a lot of the satellites. And that's pretty much it. Outside the country, a little bit of a trip down to Mexico, down to Juarez to a graveyard, and then to Japan, Yokosuka, the Yokohama Peninsula, the Yokosuka Naval Repair Facility, and Canada, just a short, brief time. And at the time, I think Alaska felt like it was a half-country type of experience also, going up to Emmendorf Air Force Base. Was I ever in Vietnam? No. The closest I got to Vietnam was Japan. They just wouldn't let me go. I trained for it and volunteered for it, but there must have been some rule of being an only child or something like that that prohibited me from going into a combat zone. I really don't know the answer to that, but I didn't go to Vietnam. I guess Vietnam's a nice place to visit nowadays. It seems to be American friendly, and I've talked to people who've been there and they seem to enjoy the visit. Yeah, another question there on colony, space colony. Oh yes, I think there's about 3 thrusts going to colonize the moon right now. I guess the Chinese have one, and the rest of the world has a couple of them. I think some called Blue Horizons, and I don't recall what the other one is, but yeah, I think there's going to be a colony on the moon, and it'll probably be a combination mineral mining type of operation and also a logistics support for further space exploration, maybe tied to the Mars adventure or initiative.
Have you ever worked for NASA?
No, just as a consultant through the Air Force.
Let's see.
I guess in a career in aerospace, I think it's good to have a college education, but a lot of people that have passions for certain technologies probably outperform the college grads because they basically pick the college grads, or the college's brain trust and technology, and they can leapfrog ahead faster than you would going through a 4-year school. Elon Musk and Bill Gates would be examples of that, where the school's wonderful because it's got a database and a talent pool, but as your individual passion toward a subject goes, then you can pretty much use the schools as I call it a jump start. Obviously, having degrees and so forth give you the credentials for getting employed and as prestige as a company into your business. But there's a lot of talents out there that are really great that college would have been a problem for them because it would have held them back. And I think Musk and Gates are 2 great examples of that.
Do you think that they're ever trying to colonize Mars?
I think that's what the idea is to go to Mars and establish a colony and have a place to go if planet Earth becomes a problem. I don't know, you have to talk to environmentalists about that. But yes, I think Mars might be a good place to start. What's that? How much money do you make in aerospace? Well, nowadays, most engineers coming out will probably be making $70,000 plus a year. Okay. I would suspect with any type of advanced degree and talent, you probably want over $100,000 a year. I was on a Air Force pay scale for about 21 years, and then and that was up through the ranks from starting as a second lieutenant, ending up as a major lieutenant colonel type of progression. That's for about the 20-year type of career. In the aerospace industry, I think at the time it was starting around 50,000, and nowadays it can be way over 100,000. And is that profitable to you? There's definitely more money in other businesses and so forth, but it should be a fun thing for you as well. Oh yes. While you're in aerospace, you'll have lots of cafeterias to go to. Almost all of these larger firms have cafeterias, and they have all sorts of great food selections for you, and they're all under the health kick nowadays. So watch your protein, watch your carbohydrates, and so forth. And a lot of people pushing to becoming vegetarians or vegans. And so you have to ask people, like, what's your favorite food? And fortunately for me, it's really simple. I really like ice cream as a overall product. And I guess my second choice is pizza, because you can always doctor it up with whatever flavors you want, be it meats or vegetables or different spices and so forth.
Have you ever walked on the moon or seen Mars or any of the planets?
Only in the movies, okay? And I guess that brings up a subject that's probably more along the lines of the technology nowadays. The military used to call it synthetic environment, and the civilian world called it virtual reality. And you've probably seen that already with some of the goggles and visors they have for different sports and so forth. Well, they had the same type of thing for simulations and so forth. So obviously, yep, I can say, yeah, I walked on the moon because I was involved in a basically a virtual reality suit that allowed me to exercise being on the moon. It was a great experience, and probably about the same as a little bit of a free fall type of environment. So you're planted, and the system gave you a little bit of a sense of a gravity offset, but in reality, without being there, you don't get to enjoy the 1/8 gravity experience.
Do you think that there ever be like a military type hypersonic aircraft?
Well, they have them now. Some of them are unmanned. Will there be a manned aircraft? That's a good question, because when you get that speed, small turns become high Gs, okay? And I don't think we've solved the G loading for a human. It's, in some ways, we're a very delicate creature. In other cases, we're very robust. But with a hypersonic vehicle, and we're talking up Mach 15, that type of thing. In space, when you're going to have to make a real hard turn, probably great. Near the Earth, might be a little bit of a bigger issue, because I think your turning radius has to be tighter, means more high Gs, and that probably leaves that for the robots to handle. I think humans need to maintain themselves at a lower G level. Now that's, I say that because I think they can work the technology, but I think it's going to be tough. I mean, right now, one of the biggies for pressurized suits is putting people into diving suits and sustaining very high pressures. And most of the time, they have to be inside a vehicle to maintain that. So putting a astronaut through high Gs and hypersonic speeds may come about, but I don't see it for the next 20 years anyway. When I was working the GPS project, we were estimating the cost of the handheld or the man-pack type of receiver. And at the time, the technology on integrated circuits was just going really fast. I mean, it was like an order of magnitude every 7 years, it seemed like. And we blew the cost estimate on it. We had the little thing being about $10,000. And now, about 40 years later, the thing's like 25 cents. So the question goes with, where's the technology leads you, okay?
Have you ever made a website for anybody or yourself?
I've only done a website for my business a long time ago. I was using a program called, or a tool called Front Page, and it did the job. I was able to integrate an audio along with videos, and also made some animations and so forth. It was pretty much oriented toward my hobbies of playing tennis and fishing, hunting, and archery, and some shooting. I got more friends that shoot than I do. I'm now trying to go back to archery. It's all fun stuff. It's outdoors. Indoors, it's like playing cards, playing chess, playing the games on the computers. Those things start out with Pong. There's a game called Pong. And then I think there's the Mario Brothers had a game. And then they got all sorts of games now, I guess. All sorts of things like Advanced Dragons and Dungeons. And I don't know, there's something called, it's a military one out there called, was it Combat or?
Call of Duty?
Call of Duty, that's it, yeah. I guess those keep getting amplified or enhanced every so often to give you another challenge or another feature. Are any of those applied to virtual reality type of?
Not that I know of.
Or just
I'd
on
say
the
they'd
screen?
probably make them, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know, like, I've seen on the screen, I thought I saw some that had visors attached to it. So I think you'll see more of that advancement.
I know there's a couple games that do. I'm just not sure what they're called.
Hmm. Oh, and one thing that, talking about flying airplanes and drones, the simulations that they have on a computer, especially desktop, are really quite good. So if you practice on that, I guess even if you're taking a driver's test for a car, if you practice on that, you become pretty proficient right away when you take over an airplane or some sort of vehicle. So I think you're going to see more of that also, not just for transportation purposes, but also for heavy-duty operators too, that they put them through a simulator. And that way, when they get on the machine, they're pretty much ready to go.
Do you like hunting and fishing?
I did a lot of hunting early on. I haven't done that for a while, but fishing I still do. I like to fly fish, catch and release. When I'm camping, I don't even use a pole. I just basically block up the stream and catch the fish and fry them. I mean, no hook, no fishing rod or anything like that. Just grab the fish and go. But over here at Lake Charles, for instance, it's pretty good bait casting fishing over there.
Yeah, that's very, very true.
You've been over there?
Yeah.
Do you like outdoor activities like hiking and all that?
Oh yeah, well, part of my when I was growing up in the St. Louis area, there's a place called Cliff Cave, and there's some other caves up there, and it used to get really muddy and dirty, and we were using a clothesline or a cotton rope to keep piped outdoors.
Yeah. Do you like outdoor activities or hiking or anything in that matter?
Oh yes, that's most of my activities are in outdoors, and one of them I like quite a bit is rock climbing. I used to be an instructor for the Southern California Mountaineers Association, and it had a technical aspect of basically working friction and locks with things called friends and carbiners, and putting ropes in so you had the make the adjustments for tension and keeping the body from swinging and falling off the side of a rock. And it's measured in levels like a 5.5 or a 510 type of climb. A 510 is almost a vertical wall, and then you can, the amount of grips on it and so forth, drive it to maybe a 511 or 512. But it's all good stuff. If you're out in fresh air, you're stretching the body, getting some exercise, and the real kicker is when you have to go into some of these sites, you carry a 60-pound pack with your climbing gear plus your food and your shelter and clothing, and that keeps you in shape too.
Where were you during 9/11?
What was I doing at 9/11? 9/11. That's a great question. I think I was watching television, and then they got interrupted, and I think I actually saw the second plane crash into the Twin Towers, and I didn't see the first activities at all, but it was like everything basically went into total emergency mode. I think they shut down the airports, and this was really a national crisis.
Yeah, indeed it was.
Yes, September 11th, 2001, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have any friends in the Twin Towers or anything like that, but I knew people who did, and that was tragic. And I'm really impressed with the people in New York and the world with actually helping bring that area back to a
Beautiful sight.
good site, a monument, because that was a tragedy. You know, the Trade Center had been attacked before with a bomb that didn't go off. I guess they put it in the parking area down below, and somehow it flunked the test, and the terrorists weren't successful there. But coming in with fuel-loaded airplanes is
That's
a bad,
take care of it, yeah.
bad scene.
Do you play any video games?
Not recently. I guess some of these games now you can play for money. It's almost like the old pinball machines used to shake, rattle, and roll for 25 cents a game or something like that, and you hit the jackpot and get yourself free games or money. So I guess online you can get those type of games nowadays. I don't know, have you experienced any of that?
A little bit. I've seen ads pop up around them.
Yeah, I know it exists, but I haven't experienced it. That's probably a money-making software job for somebody who's making gambling games like that or challenging games. And they could probably set up tournaments and so forth like that. You know, everybody can put in a few dollars and have some prize money for somebody who can outdo somebody else. Well, they mostly time and points type of accumulation. You know, how fast can you do this, or how many points can you accumulate?
Do you think that do you think that people will ever be able to fix global warming?
I think people survived global warming in the past.
Yeah.
How much global warming, I don't know. I think that's part of the technology of going to Mars and so forth, is if you are pushed into a global warming that's beyond the current status of mankind, then we have the technology to adapt. And I think that's probably the most important thing, is being able to adapt. There's a lot of things that global warming could benefit if you can handle the downside. And I think that global warming would probably make more of the planet more inhabitable, more land, and maybe better water. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of pluses to it. I mean, but right now I'm on this I don't believe it type of side of the argument, because I agree the environment changes, but that's sort of like what Mother Nature has in mind all the time, is a little more water here, a little more dust here, a little more wind here, and so forth. But I think if it's true that there is global warming, then so be it. I mean, one of my dreams is to basically cruise across the North Pole in a sweater. So if I could, you know, so I'm actually a pro global warmer, because I feel that you know, the heat's not going to be that bad when transcribed. It doesn't take a lot of heat to melt the ice once you have it jacked up a temperature too. And people say, well, it's going to flood the coastlines. Yeah. People can build above water.
Yeah,
that's what I have stilts for. And you see some of these places like Venice and in Italy, and you come down to some of these Asian countries, and you see places built on stilts so they can hide, they can handle a tide. I mean, I went to Thailand to climb one time, and it was part of we were going to clean up from a tsunami. Well, all the trash and stuff went about a quarter mile into the jungle, and the people said, well, if you want to go in there and clean it up, fine, but the cobras will probably have more fun with you than you will with cleaning up. So we pretty much stayed back. But the interesting thing was that our shoreline on some of the roads around noontime, they were flooded. And then when the tide backed off, they conducted business again. So global warming, bring it on.
Boathouses.
Boathouses.
What do you think boathouses?
A lot of people live on boats.
Yeah.
I was trying to get my daughter to live on one when she was going to University of Irvine. There's a Newport Beach area there that had some boats, and people live there. They live in there now. You get these 25-footers plus, and you got a pretty nice luxury apartment. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like luxury, you can go over to some of the places in Asia and see the people living on their boats there. And I guess you can go to Arkansas and see people living on their houseboats too.
Go like Northport, you see a lot of them.
Are there?
Yeah, there's, I think I seen 15 the other day when I was up there.
Well, which lake was this? Up in Norfolk? Or?
It's Lake North Fork. It's over towards Pine Bluff, I think. No, it's not Where is it, Logan?
Where,
Lake North Fork.
like North Fork,
Yeah.
Mountain Home, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in that area, right? That's where I've seen it too. And that's a good way to live.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a better, maybe a better example. These cruise lines, they can rent you a apartment, so to speak, for a year easily. Just maybe the same one, or you can skip different boats. I guess they had a problem with one of it. It was supposed to be a 3-year tour of the world, and they ran out of money or something, and they couldn't find a boat, so they had to return the funds to these people. And some people had sold their houses and all sorts of things like that, but they weren't able to fulfill the contract of giving a 3-year cruise.
Wow.
So yeah, living on a boat everywhere from a little fishing boat to a super luxury
Maybe,
cruise liner.
Yeah.
People do it all the time. I mean, there's no reason why you just can't park it somewhere also. If you got a housing problem, just bring them. Well, that's what they did in New York for the COVID. They actually brought a medical ship into the harbor up there to accommodate the hospitals they thought were going to be overflowed. So living on a boat, not a problem. We already solved that one. That's another feature, though, for a technology that's really big. Most of the nuke power plants in the United States and maybe overseas as well tend to hire Navy people that have handled nuclear reactors on board ships like aircraft carriers. And when you think about the number of aircraft carriers the United States has, and they're all nuclear, they basically become floating power plants. So you can take them anywhere in the world pretty much where there's a coastline and create power. So, I mean, air power is one thing, but electrical power is another thing, and it's just a very power supplied ship.
Yeah.
And so that's a technology that goes on with aerospace as well, that nuclear technology. What does ever met?
I think he's trying to mean nuclear. Talking about nuclear boats, Alex?
Oh, yeah. That's another thing. When I was doing this hypervelocity work, a lot of it was oriented toward the reentry systems or reentry vehicles for like the Navy Trident missile system and the Trident submarine and missile systems. And also with the Air Force's Minuteman 1, 2, 3, and then the Peacekeeper. All those had nuclear interfaces that had to survive this high heat environment and high G environment that you encounter when you're re-entering the Earth's atmosphere after being traveling through space for a few minutes. And in that, you see a lot of miniaturization taking place, scaling down the warheads down from these super megatons down to hundreds of kilotons. And that technology goes a long ways in helping develop nuclear reactors for the future as well.
Have you ever built any airplanes?
Only the little model airplanes, and used to be made out of balsa wood, and I've never built a metal airplane. I've had friends that have made gliders, and I've made metal skinned airplanes, but it takes a lot of work. You have to have a garage, and you have to have a pretty big operation to do that, especially when it's going to be manned. Now, if you're going to build a model airplane, my neighbor was really good at that, and he had a lot of them at the time used wood with a fabric, and you put some sort of lacquer on it to harden it, and it gave you a pretty good airfoil to fly with. So you get the wings and the fuselage and the ailerons and so forth, and tie it together with little cables. And nowadays you can do it with little remote actuators, so you can lighten it up, make it bigger, stronger, fly further, higher. Mine, I had one friend that had a jet engine, and the other one, they're all propeller driven. And I don't think I've seen electric ones lately, but prior to that, I think they're all little small engine props that uses gasoline, and you just flick the prop with your finger, and it started up, and away you go.
Did you ever work on nuclear equipment?
Only, like I said, the interface with the ACE, the Atomic Energy Commission, and moving warheads from different locations to and from the sites.
Have you ever built any computers?
In college, I got to build one small digital computer that could maybe add, subtract. That's basically a handheld calculator. And the other one was an analog computer, and it was pretty much just matching up waveforms. And then it's interesting when you go from analog to digital. It's almost like you digitize analog, then you work the details on a digital input, and it becomes an analog analysis. It's like digital builds analog, and analog basically refines digital. So that's an interesting concept for. They also had something called fluidic computers also, which was a good computer design. It was almost like pressures. They could use the pressure for a given cavity and got a certain amount of gas or fluid. You could basically do a computation.
Alex, what's the time?
30-minute mark.
On the Ridge used to be the place to go to every Saturday. Go to the movies. It was right next to the Sexton drugstore. Go in there. I think we had ice cream or something like that, and come up to Walnut Ridge and watch ball games. I think there was one. There was some competition. The St. Louis Cardinals used to come to Walnut Ridge or to Hoxie and play the local all-star team. And if there's somebody good on it, they'd probably bring them up to St. Louis or next year down to Florida for spring training. And but Walnut Ridge now has really grown quite a bit since I was here back in the 50s. They got a good school system, got the university nearby, and seems to have a pretty modern perspective, especially with the interstates or the highways 63 and 67 coming through the area. And I guess bringing it on sometime in the future, there'll probably be a I-57 extension that comes down this way, and that'll even be a more shining future for it. They got a really good airport area also over by, at the Black River.
Oh yeah, WRHS.
That area. And I guess there's a museum over there also.
Yeah, Wings of Honor.
Okay. Those are all pluses. And I think more agriculture is bringing in higher tech activities. I guess there's probably going to be room for drone services around here also. I guess the nearest one now is like Memphis or Poplar Bluff or something like that.
Yeah.
But might be able to have a drone service that basically works with the crop dusters or something like that. Because I know one of the things that a lot of people are concerned about is when they crop dust, there's a lot of, what do you call it, collateral problems that affect the people nearby if the winds are wrong or something like that. And I think for safety purposes, you don't want the crop dusters coming down too low, but they have to be low enough to make sure they got the coverage. And it doesn't all blow away. So, I mean, maybe drones might help augment that.
Did you ever work with drones?
Not really. I played with them a couple of times, and my friends have played with them. And they're really great for photography purposes. But one of the biggest issues becomes winds aloft. And it's not very windy down here at 10 or 20 feet, but when you start shooting a drone up to a couple hundred feet up in the air, drones can be swept away if they're not powerful enough with the wind currents. And then you've just lost your $100 because where did it go? It's like the tornado took it somewhere.
Yeah.
Have you ever built any drones?
No, I haven't. I mean, I've assembled the ones that they send you, but that's about it. That's a packaging. Most of them are already reattached. All you do is spring them out and maybe tighten them down somehow.
Nuclear cruise ships. What's your opinion on them?
nuclear cruise ships? Probably a real good deal.
Yeah.
I think that's one of those things where you're talking about having living on board a ship. That would probably be a real good application of nuclear power and keep everybody warm and take them where they want to go, not have to worry about the fueling issue.
Yeah.
I think some of those nuclear reactors are good for like 7+ years. I don't recall it. I know that they were looking at longer time periods, but I think 7 is the current technology level before they go in for any type of major repairs.
Okay.
Do you watch any sports?
Well, I like football and basketball, and I obviously am tied to tennis quite a bit because I teach tennis and pickleball. But I like a lot of sports on TV. I have a little bit of a concern. This is interesting. I've gone to the Hoxie and Walnut Ridge football games, and they're just great. But it's because the crowds aren't 10,000 or a 90,000 population. Because when I go to like USC ball games or to UCLA games, the crowds are just it just overwhelms me. I think stay down around 5,000 or less, and I can probably do okay in the parking lot and all. But nowadays they try to minimize parking by branching out to different parking lots and busing you into the stadiums.
Yeah.
That may be a thing of the future, but for me, I think a small town football is probably just right.
What's your favorite football team?
My favorite football team. Used to be the Raiders. I moved to the Rams, and I like, I guess Seattle also.
Okay.
Oh, I know the one. I'm currently following a guy by the name of Christian McCaffrey, and he had a relative that I taught tennis to or a long time ago, so I follow him, and that's the San Francisco 49ers. So yeah, they're my favorite team right now. And Kristen's doing pretty good. He got transferred out or traded over to the 49ers, I think, from some East Coast team.
Do you like basketball or baseball or anything of them sports?
I've played both, and obviously basketball is more fun being inside in the wintertime. And the baseball, if you got a good pitcher, it's pretty boring out there in the outfield. Okay, the guy's like, is he ever going to hit the ball out here? No. Or when you do get something, it's a pop-up or something. So it's fun. It's a good team sport. And it's sort of relaxing. But you got to be in shape on it because you start running around those bases and throwing the ball, you can get hurt. And the guys are really great at sliding and being able to make those turns. It's high-speed turns running around and trying to do a 12-second 100 yards is quite a move. So, yeah. I've played them, like them. Not my sport anymore, though. I think I'm pretty more oriented toward tennis and golf. Oh, there's a big one coming up that you might see. There's something called pickleball, and you may see more of that in the future, too, because I think a lot of people don't really like the over-stressing of tennis. But pickleball seems to be a good catch-on sport nowadays for folks.
How's your Thanksgiving?
Oh, my Thanksgiving is unbelievable. The cooks in Black Rock and Walnut Ridge were fantastic. Had a church affair over in Pocahontas, and I came back over here that was earlier before, around the 18th. And I came back, I was over at our place, and we had a fantastic luncheon, about 20 people in the family there, and the afternoon one, about 5 o'clock over here in Walnut Ridge, was unbelievable. I guess we had about 30 people there. And Walnut Ridge folks are great.
I don't know what else to ask
What's
you.
I'll reverse a little bit here. What are your interests in the science and technology? Because one of the things, when you make good grades in high school and so forth, there's always a chance you might be able to follow that on into college and get a scholarship, or at least get an entrance to a good school. And when I say good school, I'm not talking about necessarily the quality of education, because that is really teacher dominant. But there's a lot of prestige in different schools as you go to, and it's going to the University of Arkansas carries a certain prestige. Going to Oklahoma State University, another type. Going to Arkansas State, that's a good school, but it's probably not as high up on the prestige list as, say, University of Arkansas. And again, if you can't go there, then there's lots of great trade schools around also. And I sort of recommend them, like, for a lot of people, things like welding and electronics would be great, because more and more activities require that type of technology to work with.
What do you think of East?
What is
East.
what East what?
East Initiative.
East Initiative.
Initiative, yeah.
Initiatives in respect to what? Technology, social, or
Yeah, that. A little bit all of it.
all of it? Future initiatives, okay. I think you're going to see more and more concern for your fellow man. One of my favorite thoughts is mental telepathy, or what I call telepathic learning, so that we already have a sort of an experience with it now. When COVID hit, we were doing a lot of remote type of activities. You're on your computer and the teacher's somewhere else, and you're online education. So you can see more and more of that. And I think you're going to see a lot of this type of activity with the podcasting also, where you can share information or experiences that, may give some people an insight or a motivation or a perspective that they can share with somebody else or apply it to their own lives. So I think that's the major thing that the technology initiatives bring up, is that communication and sharing of information and emotions. In the transportation arena, I think you're going to be more and more stay-at-home-ish, so you may not have the person-to-person meetings like you have with this little interview going on here.
Yeah.
I mean, this interview can be conducted remotely just as easily as here in this studio. So, got to keep that in mind. Health-wise, I think you're going to run into the personalized treatment, at least for the next 10 or 20 years, where it's not one shot for everybody. It's like you're going to get a special one because of your DNA for what vulnerabilities your immune system has, and someone else is going to get a different set of injections for their activities. And you're going to see the applied nanotechnology, where you got little machines that are a few molecules in size, basically cleaning out your system. So when you need your cholesterol changed in your bloodstreams, or channels, this little robot will go through there and pretty much grind it up for you, and it'll be flushed out, and you won't have the strokes taking place, and you'll have good, strong blood system. I call it circulatory system. So a lot of medical, transportation, space, going to Mars, that's going to bring a lot of jobs and interest, and as well as working with the sea and the environment.
You got anything you want to say to the graduating class?
Well, you have a January graduating class, or you have a June, or both?
I think June.
June only.
I'm
Okay.
not sure. Don't quote me on that. May.
May class. Okay. Well, for any for their future, it's an open book for them. They can do just about anything, and they can tailor their college environment or their college experience to the things that they have a passion for. And if they don't have a passion for something, they probably need to find one, so that they have a life that they can remember. And I think if it's got music, if it's the arts, that's wonderful. You may need a day job along with that, but I think a lot of musicians could be very good software programmers, because they already know how to read and write music, and music is pretty much just a different form of digital programming. Try and make your fortune early in life so that it's easier on you in the future when you get older. And get a good foundation in depth and in breadth. And a university experience can do that for you. But if you feel like you're wasting your time, you might as well just go for it and find a trade or find somebody who can mentor you. And it's amazing what's out there, and especially nowadays with the ability to, with our communications and computers and telephones. And you can go out with your phone and become a plumber by somebody back home telling you exactly what to do. And from that experience, you can learn how to do it, and you can tell somebody else how to do it.
I do think we have run out of time today for this podcast.
Hey, well, thank you very much.
No problem.
Again. Okay. Caleb, Logan, Alex, appreciate it. Good luck in your podcast programs, okay?
Yes, sir.
So.